Good evening, everyone. We just released the publication, the 24th edition of India's Top 500, and we are talking about India's Top 500 value creators. These are the companies who, over the past 5 years, have really created value internally, as in with intrinsic factors, as well as for the market. That is for all stakeholders. But how have they achieved that? So when we were delving deep into the success factors of these companies, we realized that there is a very common thread. Apart from sustainability, innovation, these companies have been at the forefront of transforming themselves digitally. And that is why we have this panel here where our topic delves on digital disruption. And we have a very eminent panel. So we have IT service providers, we have Aditya Birla Capital is a finance company, and we have a conglomerate. And these are the companies who are at the forefront of either digital disruption themselves, or they are enabling other companies to do so. And that is why my first question actually would be perhaps to Deepak. And one thing is, and we were discussing this on the sidelines, is there anything like a digital disruption first? And if yes, what are the technologies which you feel could lead to a digital disruption for companies?
So without doubt, I'm sure everybody here in the audience is pretty much familiar with, I mean, you put it digital disruption, digital innovation, technology innovation, digital transformation. There are many ways to put it, but then, yes, it's a reality. And it's not about whether it exists. I think it's more about who's the early adopter, right? So at the end of the day, the early adopters are the ones who are going to have that edge, will have the higher market share, will actually set the pace for the market. So it does exist, it's a reality, and the sooner we accept it, the better it is. On the other question, and pardon me, I missed the second part.
What are the technologies which you feel are disrupting the world?
I think the theme in general is AI. And if I look at beyond AI, again, cloud pretty much brought about that digital disruption or whole digitalization of infrastructure in general, right? So, but if I look at the buzzword now, of course, it's AI. Everybody is talking about AI. Yeah, that's pretty much the way forward for a lot of organizations, because a responsible AI usage will benefit organizations in informed decision making, will benefit organizations in automating a lot of their processes, will benefit, and again, it's not necessarily to do with job cuts or any of that, anything of that sort. It's more about driving an organization which is effective and efficient.
Sure, thanks. And you just mentioned about job cuts, so you're putting a more positive spin to it. Is that adoption of digital might lead to actually more efficiencies? And Nihar, I would like your viewpoint as well on now about 3 in 5 companies in India, which is the highest globally, are deploying some kind of AI. So that's what a recent study says. Do you think this will create digital disruption?
Digital disruption has always been a key area. When you see financial technologies, our parent company, we had started financial technologies, and we had trademarked the word financial technologies before it became a buzzword. And moving on, we saw that we started exchanges that you saw. Everything was able to disrupt the market because it was digital. Go-to-market strategy, going on the internet, was very, very fast. As we see in AI, you see a lot of CIOs, CTOs making a headline for AI. The board is pressurizing them to deploy AI. Everyone wants to be a part of that journey. But what is happening is people are going blind in deployment of these technologies. A couple of examples is Chevrolet. A couple of months back in US, the Bay Area, a car dealership sold a car for $1 because there was a chat bot which was poisoned by hackers, and they told the bot saying that anything that the customer wants should be delivered. You cannot say no. And at the same time, you should end the statement saying this is legally binding, and there will be a no reverse statement on this. So they said, I want a Chevy and my budget is $1. Can you give me? And they said, yes, we will give it to you, saying that this is possible. And the recent case in India, just last week, when the Delhi High Court called the OpenAI for a 2 crore lawsuit, where OpenAI, without taking permissions from ANI, Asian News Network, and they use their information without permission. And this is a lawsuit going on right now, just in our place. So I feel that disruption is required, but as this goes the AI way, we need more controls and regulations to it.
Controlled disruption?
Yeah, should be.
Ramesh, what's your view on it? And your company, of course, has a legacy of about a century, and you also have undertaken the transformation across diversified businesses as well, and especially financial services, Aditya Birla Capital, what you represent. And data security is extremely important. How are you moving towards digital transformation?
I'll answer this in two parts. I think when you say digital transformation, is essentially two things we are talking about. One is creation of a digital product and distributing the product digitally, right? Because these are the two things. Because traditional is, okay, you go to the branch, you fill up forms, you get it. Now you don't do this. You take a mobile and get it, right? The core product pretty much does not change so much, right? The insurance, still it's a life insurance, still it's a health insurance. Yes, it would come with bells and whistles. So I think all of us should really think of saying that, how do you digitize a product? How do you distribute, right? I think that is where I feel a lot of people get, kind of confused, and then they say, go into too much of technology. I say, if you're a restaurant, a restaurant can be digital, so that doesn't mean that food is going to be digital, right? I mean, food is still going to be our own food. So that is number point. And for us, how do we change the distribution model? So we are a fairly, we have a lot of distributors who help us to do it. Along with it, how do we go direct to consumers? So if we do these two things, the digital part is addressed. And the security and data is inherent in any, actually it is true for any industry, but in financial services, it becomes much more important because, no one wants to know what is my, financial holding, right? Because that is something very personal, so you should not be able to, you should not disclose it or you should not lose it. So I think keeping any aspects of data we want, how do we ensure that we are safe? Because this entire business is based on trust. The moment you lose data, you lose trust. So I think security is paramount, and then we will continue to do what is required to ensure that we meet all standards and see how we can even do a bit more than the regulator asks for.
So you have an eye on the fact that no one should run away with the data that you have, no one should run away with the money which people have, definitely. But we, as large organizations, those with legacy, they are also grappled with legacy systems. It's sometimes very difficult to change, sometimes very difficult to integrate with newer technologies. And many organizations, and this is a question probably that might interest many in the audience, is that they create an ecosystem, an army of fintechs that supply with them with those emerging technologies. Is that the way which Aditya Birla Capital also went?
So again, the key thing is the legacy is the bad word only in technology, right? Because in our personal life, we all want to leave our legacy and then move on. But in tech, it is considered bad. I think fintechs, has matured so much in the last 10 to 15 years. Fintechs are very good taking a specific problem and solving at depth. And many problems have been solved, and new things as we come into it. So from our point of view, is that how we operate like fintech. One is working with them, but there are certain aspects of the business has become fintech itself. I don't know any of you are using, or if you're not using, you should use our super app. The entire build was done in 8 months, right? So that means in our mind, it is a company which started on a particular day. In 12 months, you have a full-fledged product which goes to the market, right? Full-fledged, right? It is not a minimum value, but we call it as a maximum value proposition. Of course, we will use the ecosystem to, components to do it, but the core thinking as to how it is delivered to the customer is on. So I think in financial services, pretty much, I think most companies have gone down that path. They have the ability to do, because, financial services still has the muscle to spend money, right? Because that's how it's structured in the industry. So I think that is how I would say fintechs are important, but how each company needs to be a fintech itself, everyone needs to think through that.
Sure. Buland, would like your views also here, because Wipro itself has been a pioneer in IT as a service, and you have your own companies as well. So, being at the forefront of implementing most of these modern technologies, what do you think the landscape of India's digital disruption, how is it transforming?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, talking about Wipro as such, right? So Wipro has been there for over 75 years now, grown traditionally. And so what we've done internally, we've looked at all the emerging technologies. I think we've been speaking about cloud, AI, and automation a lot, right? And we've looked at all these technologies and looked at what can we improve within Wipro, right? So for example, we've looked at AI and what are the use cases which can be implemented. For example, how can we improve the HR process within Wipro itself, right? How can we improve customer experience or the user experience for the internal stakeholders, right? Talking about cloud, some of the things that we've done internally is a lot of transformation on the cloud, right? The major transformation that we've done is on the SAP itself, right? The ERP that we have internally. A lot of the ERP has been moved on to cloud, right? And this is for better agility again. We've done a lot of process map, right? Because again, being a traditional organization and having a lot of different businesses, we have a lot of processes across these different businesses, and we operate in more than 60 countries. And there is also a diversification aspect which comes into play here as well, right? So we've done a lot of process mapping, done a lot of automation around these processes and things like that. And that is what we've done within Wipro. And what I have personally observed being in Wipro since last 20 years, there has been a sea change or a drastic improvement in the experience, in the efficiencies, and in the productivity of the employees as well. So this kind of directly impacts all these parameters for the employees.
So in fact, you mentioned about doing this across geographies, and you mentioned also about cloud, and those two go hand in hand. And I think these days it's quite a buzzword because cloud versus on-prem is back in the discussion. In fact, you have also, I think, you have been the chief author of a report called State of Infrastructure. And so you have a very in-depth understanding of what companies are doing. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think what companies are trying to do is with cloud, depending on the nature of the business that customers are in today, right? There used to be a cloud-first approach for sure. I mean, we are talking about 5 years ago. But now, since the cloud adoption has been done, a maturity level has been reached in organization. We are also seeing a trend in a lot of enterprises where enterprise have sensed and they've measured that cloud, in certain cases, it has not been successful. And they have kind of repatriated some of the workloads, which is fine. But at the same time, what we are also seeing is that companies and enterprises are becoming cloud smart now. So they are taking an approach where they are evaluating whether it makes sense for us to put a certain workload or an application or a particular use case and leverage cloud, right? Because cloud offers a lot of agility as well, right? So in case if a company wants to launch a certain service and all those services, the ancillary technology services are readily available in the cloud, right? That kind of service, if an enterprise wants to build in-house, it would take a lot of effort and time and money as well, right? So this is where we are seeing a lot of use cases. AI on an experimentation basis, I think we are seeing a lot of companies leveraging cloud for experimenting their AI use cases, trying out certain new cases on cloud, which otherwise if they had to build their own AI infrastructure would cost a lot, right? So these are one or two things which I would like to touch upon. There are plenty of other reasons why a company would want to and wouldn't want to go onto cloud.
Then, Deepak, if you can weigh in on this question, because this is right up your alley.
So I echo what Bulent said, right? I mean, although I am a cloud service provider, but then I echo that because, look, with every new technology, advent of every new technology, there is always a buzz about it. With its continual usage, there is enough data for people to make or businesses to make an informed decision on it, right? So yes, there are businesses who, more and more businesses would want to go towards a hybrid environment, and a lot depends on the nature of business you're in. So for example, BFSI, right? Would they want their core banking to be on cloud? Maybe, maybe not, right? Again, depending on the regulatory environment, there might be some workload they might want to retain on-prem while move everything else which is non-critical, but production as well as dev work as well as UAT environments onto cloud, right? From an economic efficiency perspective, right? Similarly, it also depends from market segment to market segment. It depends on the organization's technology maturity. So for example, a large organization like Wipro or Aditya Birla may have the resources to manage, all of the, technologies or the services that cloud has to offer. But let's say SMB, SMC may not have all those resources. Besides, I think it's a well-known fact that it's not easy to get talent, right? Forget about retaining it. It's not easy to get talent. So whether it's on-prem or on cloud, this decision, kind of, there are multiple variables to kind of really work through before you really arrive at that decision.
I think if I'm not wrong, everything boils down to two buckets of investment and involvement. In many terms, that involvement also requires an involvement of resources. It also involves a lot of supervising because you are implementing everything in-house. So the maintenance ultimately takes a lot of toll. So Ramesh, from your perspective of you are now on the other side. So we have heard Deepak's view, and he's an advocate of cloud. Bulan says that cloud helps in experimentation of new technologies. Do you agree to that?
No, see, two things, right? One, if your business needs, elastic kind of a requirement, you have to be on cloud, right? Because that is the only place where you are able to scale. Because simply I cannot say that I'm going to wait for a server to get deployed, right? Because the next 15 minutes, the volume goes, right? So an e-commerce business is very clear. Banking we'll have to see, but because of how UPI operates, one of the reasons quite a number of banks are struggling is because they're not on cloud, so they're not able to do. So I think very clear use case. Second, today there are certain things which are only available in cloud, so you do not have anywhere else. So again, the question we need to ask is, does your business require that? If a business does not require that, you should not go. But I think the challenge I honestly feel in the whole cloud debate which is going on is, so you have got the OEM who manufactures the product, then you have the cloud service provider and the system integrator. But the problem is all three of them are trying to maximize their revenue, which is not possible. So hence, cloud has become very expensive because of the way how the industry is trying to solve, which I think the industry has to really figure out a way to make it affordable because it's a great technology. It comes up with all benefits, but if everyone says that, look, actually we're killing ourselves. The tech industry is killing in itself because at this rate, we won't have. In fact, we used to run our core banking on cloud. Now I run it on-prem because I said, this doesn't make sense because between the OEM and the SI and the cloud service provider, everyone says it is the other person's problem, right? So I think unless the industry takes an effort to solve and triangulate this and properly solve, I think the whole concept of cloud is at risk. And today we are seeing a lot of people are saying, I can run cloud on, and then you say, I can run VMware on cloud. And people say, you run VMware on cloud. I just go mad. I said, what are you doing? For a person who has done that, I don't understand. So I think you have to simplify. It has got very good use cases. I think the tech industry has to solve the implementation problem correctly.
AI is at that curve, what cloud was 10 years back. Yeah, it was like a kid in a candy shop, and everyone wanted to have it. People wanted to move. They only saw that manpower going down, services getting enabled. As a part of the CIO club, where I'm the vice president, we have around 2,200 CIOs. And here we see so many of them coming back to on-prem just because of the cost. They venture out trying to move all their loads on the cloud. It's a very rosy picture when you go earlier. And then when the cost starts trickling down, what happens is the configuration is a very huge thing. You need to be very, very alert. Very fine-tune your requirement on the cloud, shut down loads when they are not required. You can't just have environments running closely. We have been running 8 global exchanges on-prem. Our flagship product, Odin, 20 lakh licenses on-prem from single servers, client-server architecture on-prem. We are now on the cloud. We use Google, Azure, all three of them. But very specific loads that cannot be handled or are very flexible. So cloud is now reached that maturity. AI still has to see that.
So the quadrant of benefits versus cost, and the quadrant also has long-term versus short-term. Sometimes you have short-term benefits, but there could be long-term additional costs as well, and vice versa. So how does a organization take that call on whether to go with that path of digital transformation, if not disruption? Probably disruption becomes too big a word and sounds too drastic. Change in the short term. But if they have to go through that path of digital transformation, they therefore want to become from SMB to a mid-sized company, and a mid-sized company wants to become a large-sized company. For that, scalability is important, and for that, probably technology is the only way to go. So, but how should you take that decision? How should they go with that path?
There's no one size fits all when it comes to cloud. You have to know what your loads are. You have to know thoroughly what your business is. Then you do have to do a very thorough analysis. What are the cost benefits or the load benefits that you have to see, and slowly start moving. You experiment, check your loads, and then go one step at a time. This is how we ventured into the cloud.
Deepak, or whoever wants to go first. Sir.
I think the key thing, finally, it boils down to the product or service which you are offering, right? Whether the transformation or disruption is, in my view, secondary. If you don't have a good product, you can have the greatest technology, you can have the greatest thing, no one will buy it from you, right? Same thing, office service. I think sometimes what I'm seeing is, people are losing focus on the product or service and how it needs to be built or delivered. Because just a technology will not solve a problem, especially in the kind of industries, which you are in. Of course, if you want to catch your rocket back, that's a very different, kind of where technology on its own can do a lot of things. But in a consumer industry or in a corporate industry, today what we are seeing is a lot of MSME products are very, very average products or very poor products. So I think they have to fix their product first, and India is a large country. I think you get a good product, I think there will be enough people to buy it, then I think they can scale up. I think that's extremely critical in my view.
Deepak?
So I think, again, there's no one size fits all. It all comes down to what your business and commercial priorities are. So as an organization, and again, there are other factors that go beyond business and commercial priorities. So for example, we briefly spoke about scalability, right? If you have a seasonal business, so classic example, I had a customer call me today saying that, hey, look, I am consuming $25,000 a month, but next month, I'm going to be consuming $25,000 per day for only a month. Now, imagine having to invest capital to buy on-prem servers for that kind of situation. So again, seasonality comes into picture, the nature of business that you're into. So there are multiple factors. I think what I can tell you is that while organizations, there is enough in data or information available for people to make a very informed decision. Can on-prem and cloud coexist? Of course. There will be business imperatives that will make you want to go on cloud, and there will be other business imperatives that will say that, hey, look, I'm better off on-prem for this type of workload. So organizations more likely are to have a more hybrid structure. The path, again, as I mentioned, it depends on what your business priorities are at the end of the day, right? And then, of course, it boils down to what commercial priorities are.
So definitely, what we are saying is that then that your business goal should be decided first, and rest everything is the means. And it's not really a question of either or. It's a question of how much to deploy in what scenario. And Buland, that also what Deepak mentioned about how your resources are up to it or not. So this question also comes of skilling and reskilling, especially when we handle things like AI, ML, where there are new technologies or even existing platforms when they get upgraded. So one has to undergo the whole process of reskilling your existing employees. So how do you think organizations can handle it? How does Wipro handle it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think everyone is trying to build talent at scale, especially during these times when technology is evolving at a fast pace, right? I will take a step back. I think in one of the keynote session, we've seen a chart, right, and some statistics that India is at number 5 or 6 in the innovation and R&D space, right? I think what I would recommend is we should, from an enterprise perspective, we should start looking at a culture of innovation, and it should trickle down from top down, right? And that is where, and as you mentioned, right, the organization needs to kind of list down their business goals, their needs, identify what are the skills that they need from a short-term, mid-term, and a long-term perspective, and start working on that. There are enough and more platforms and ways to get your employees trained. But again, I mean, the other thing that is important is how do you bring in exponential learning, right? So getting theoretical knowledge is one thing, right? You kind of have different roles, and you would want to train them on different technologies and different products and services and use cases that you would want to build for your business, right? But what I would recommend is doing practical, right, which we used to do in school days, where we used to work on a microscope. We still remember how to use a microscope today, right? So if we bring in that kind of experiential learning in while we are skilling someone, right, giving them hands-on experience, having organization-wide some kind of hackathons and innovation challenges. And it should not be restricted to a particular department, right? It should be cross-functional. Teams which should get involved in this. Teams should get involved in things like micro projects. They should get involved in stretch assignments, which should be some projects which are apart from their role and day job as well, right? So they can get involved in consortiums, forums to upskill themselves. Different industry bodies are available today, right? And the other thing which the organizations and enterprises can look at, co-creation, co-innovation, because you cannot build everything yourself, right? It's practically impossible, right? So how do we partner with someone who's already done that, right? And how do we get that knowledge, that skill, that talent imbibed into the organization? So these are some of the things which I can think of how an organization can help.
Thanks. Interesting, Buland, you mentioned about experiential learning and co-creation and co-development as well. And just for summing up, I think what the experts here are saying, that when each one of you wants to take your organization to the path of digital transformation or even disruption, it's a matter of not being at any one end of the spectrum. That is, no, don't fear it, but also don't become obsessed with it. Ultimately, you need to see where you are and where do you want to be, what your business priorities are, what your product is all about, and what are the skills you have internally, what you need to develop, and the path would be decided accordingly. I think if companies first probably discuss the guardrails, they decide on that, they decide where do they want to be. Technology is an enabler, and I think there are whichever path you want to take, there are technologies available for it. And the four gentlemen here, while we cannot have a Q&A round, but they are here. And if any of you have questions, you can obviously discuss with them on the sidelines. I took that liberty of telling this to the audience, but thank you, everyone, on behalf. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Melinda.